Hello health enthusiasts, how are you doing? Welcome back for another video on my channel. My name is Eddie. I hope you're having an amazing day. So in today's video we are finally going to talk about blood sugar levels and insulin and what is the problem with that specific system in our body, what problems does it create and how to solve them, of course. So let's start about blood sugar levels. We have a very thin level of sugars in our blood. That's because it's of course used in our cells, in our brains. It can be used, but our brain actually works partially solely on glucose, and too much glucose can be toxic, therefore it's regulated down, and too less can be even life-threatening. That is very dangerous, so it's regulated. But how much sugar? Okay, let's see. So a normal grown person, about 6 liters in circulation of blood, and we have roughly a flat teaspoon, about, I don't know, 5-6 grams of sugar in our whole circulation, so not that much. And what is happening when we eat like a lot of sugar? And I remind you that all the carbs are transformed very quickly into glucose and sugar. So of course they have to be taken out of the bloodstream and stored, and if we have low sugar levels in our blood, so the body can automatically regulate it and just bring from these reservoirs and break down the stored sugar and put it into our blood. So it happens to be, that the hormone, the communication system that regulates this taking out of this sugar from our blood is insulin. And this is also why it has such an enormous role, in everything we are going to talk about. So let us think what happens if I eat these 2 pieces of bread, which are pure glucose. Okay, they are very rapidly turned into sugar, and we have this sugar spike. All right, so first of all, it goes to the blood, but we already know that there are not a lot of room in the blood for this sugar, so it has to go to the reservoirs, and voila, we have pretty nice reservoirs of sugar. That's called glycogen. These are just simple molecules of sugar bind together, very easily broke down, and historically we need these because I remind you, if we in the nature right now, like Homo sapien, and we need to run fast, fat cannot be utilized. We need something like very fast, like glucose. All right, sugar. This is the only fuel that can serve this purpose as fuel. So this is why our glycogen, these stored sugar reserves, are inside our muscles and also inside our liver for different purpose. But in the liver, around 100 grams, when you go to sleep and you need to break down some sugar, it takes it from this liver, which is actually the chemical factory inside our body. The muscles have some more, right? Like around 400 grams. So in our example, when I ate these 2 pieces of bread, I'm a carb eater. I have my glycogen stores pretty full, so there is not a lot of room there. And now the insulin still needs to take this sugar out of the blood. So what it does, it shoves it to the cells to be burned as fuel. But have you ever met many people that are very like active after they eat? I don't know. Anyway, let's say that the burn rate of this sugar is not very like efficient as well. The cells can burn let's say 10 maybe to 30 grams per hour. And if you are sprinting right now, okay, so maybe this fuel will be burned. But do you know many people that do, I don't know, weightlifting, sprinting right after their meal? I don't know, I don't used to do it. And then the insulin has no choice, and it's making its final job, and this is to store this sugar as fat. The conversion, to fat is, happening from natural reasons. If we look back at our history, this is good. There are carbs, we eat, we gain fat, and then this fat is a stored energy that can actually sustain us later when there is no food. Right, so let's take a look. The insulin is sensitive. Actually, it's sensitive. It's secreted in the beta cells in the pancreas. It's actually sensitive to this glucose, most of all the glucose in the blood. Also other things, but mostly to that glucose. And as we already said, it acts like a kind of key, right? It persuades the cell to open up. Now the cell has, every cell is an autonomous system, and it has to protect itself. It has all these interfaces, so it likes glucose, right? It can deal with glucose, every single cell in our blood, in our body, but it doesn't want too much. And when the insulin, like the key that opens the portal for the glucose to come into the cell, and be burned. So eventually the cell don't want too much sugar, and then the insulin will go to the fats cells and will just create that process that is called the nuevo lipogenesis. Nuevo, it's new, lipo, fat, genesis is creation. So it will create out of this sugar fat. And people don't understand it. It's not fat that you eat, it's for the most part, it's that sugar that you eat, carb that you eat, that will turn with the nuevo lipogenesis into fat. So the body will do everything in its power to get everything necessary to get this sugar out of the blood. But this process also creates something that is called insulin resistance, because there is a certain point after we abuse and shove into this cell, and the cell will go, you know what, I have to protect myself. I will not be that sensitive to this insulin that the body secretes. You know what, I need to take care of myself. And this is the problem, and we all somewhere in that range of insulin resistance, and the final stop is actually type 2 diabetes, which is very dangerous and problematic condition that now called even epidemia. But here on this channel we are taking responsibility, and we name the things after what they are. This is not an epidemic, this is not a virus, not something that happened to you. This is something that a person just creates by himself with choices. And it's this insulin resistance is developed over decades, and with bad food choices, something that we will talk about. Now, high insulin levels are also extremely toxic. They are connected with various problems in the body, the inflammation, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. There are still much research that's going on right now, but for example, Alzheimer's, it's now called type 3 diabetes, and the high levels of insulin, they create a lot of problem. Now, how is insulin resistance connected to a high insulin levels? Well, you see, when the cell is resistive and say, you know what, I don't want this sugar, so the body try to persuade it even more, so it secretes more insulin and more and more and more insulin just to shove the sugar right into the cell. So the cells suffer, and then you have elevated levels of insulin, and all this is before you have any problem with your blood sugars. You don't see it on a blood sugar test. Everything to the doctor seems to be okay, but it's not. It's progressing, the problem is progressing. So actually, if we look at it, what creates the problem is not only the sugar, but what creates and progresses the problem is the sugar spikes. All right, the body has a fair ability to deal with sugar overall. If we are talking about the glucose now and not the fructose, we are going to talk about this later. But from that perspective of high spikes of sugar, this is very, very problematic, and it creates the problem. So high levels of sugar are toxic and oxidizing, and high levels of insulin is a different but complementary problem. So how would we know if our meal is going to create that sugar spike that is going to actually hurt us the most, and we're going to progress this problem, even if you don't have now everything? So there is index that classifies foods, and it's called the glycemic index. It says roughly how fast the sugar inside that food is going to reach your blood. Right, so very refined foods, processed foods, and specifically carbohydrates are going to hit your blood very, very fast, because their digestion is very, very simple. Very, very simple. It's going to spike, enter your blood and raise the sugars very, very fast. Even better index is the glycemic load, because it also tells what is the portion size. So if you for example eat a cookie, which is very, very bad for you, but you only eat a small piece, so of course it's probably not going to be a problem that much, like a miniature, I don't know, piece. So you also have to think about the quantity, not only what the table says. So the problem with that is you can see it in the graph. If you eat let's say low glycemic foods, so you eat it, there is some response of sugar followed by insulin. Always insulin follows the sugar, and the insulin managed to reduce this sugar, shove it into the cells, and there is now, after some time, usually it's about a couple of hours, depends on what you eat, the insulin and the sugar levels are low. What happens if you have a spike with a high glycemic food? So the peak is much steeper, higher. That creates a lot of problem, as we said, to the body, and then a lot of insulin is secreted, and it drives very fast, while your body is still responsive, the sugar down to the place where it undershoots actually. Now you have a low level of sugar in your blood, a hypoglycemia. Hypo is low, hyper is high, and you actually in that point will be in danger again, alert mode, again. So what your body will tell you is, oh man, we lack sugar, please eat something else. And it's usually it's just will create you know, hunger again, so you will want to eat again. But besides that you know, problem in the regulation, it also creates that resistance, which is a great problem. It's not urgent, it develops over years. But for me, for example, I know that I have insulin resistance because you know, if you look down and you see a belly, you see some fat, usually it's a good indicator that you have insulin resistance. You are tired after meals, you want you know, to rest, to sleep. I had major problems with that, so I know that I just abused my body to that point. But what do you do? What do you do to you know, to fix it? Is it something that is like destined you are damaged for the rest of your life? So of course we're going to talk about it in future lectures, but no, it's not a destiny. The doctors, unfortunately, usually just you know, shove medicines. They shove, for example, my father, he gets metformin, which is a drug that persuades yourselves to be more sensitive artificially. This is not such a good solution. What you want to do is naturally, you know, solve this problem. So what creates the problem is a lot of insulin. Insulin creates insulin resistance. All right, so what you want to do is just naturally get it back, and your body has a tremendous ability to heal itself if you only let it, if you just let it rest. So how do you let your body rest from insulin? Because the absence of insulin will actually be the most contributing factor to restore that insulin sensitivity. Until you will not restore that insulin sensitivity, you will not lose weight in a good manner. So you don't lose weight to restore insulin sensitivity, you actually need to restore and fix your insulin sensitivity, and then a lot of other problems will disappear, including the excess weight. So what do you do? Just the topics. You know, you eat a food that is not triggering insulin, right? And there is not a lot of insulin. There is, but not a lot. And then you create periods, extended periods of time where the insulin level is zero. It's at baseline, and there is exactly where the sensitivity is regained. You're doing it by fasting. So later on we are going to talk more in depth about all of this, how to do it correct. But you do give your organism a chance to fix itself, and it will do. It will take time. You can't fix something that has developed over decades in a week, but months, couple of months, maybe a year, it depends on your specific situation. Even type 2 diabetes, which is a severe condition, can be reversed. I saw it. It can be reversed. It is doable. It is not easy. You need to make other choices, the way you move, the way you eat, of course, when you eat. So all this and more in the next lecture. So if you gained some value you know, from this video, please subscribe for future videos. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. That way you will actually stay updated for the next videos. Thank you, have a great day, goodbye.